God of War Ragnarok is one of the most anticipated games launching on the PlayStation 5 this year. And with it being one of Sony's largest IPs, obviously it was going to get a collector's edition. But it seems like Sony has once again forgotten the one thing that many collectors would expect to be included in a collector's edition. Now, just a quick disclaimer before I get into the issue that's been plaguing Sony's collector's editions. I am aware that there are two different God of War collector's editions, with the Jotnar edition coming with a few more things than the collector's edition, but for the sake of simplicity, when I talk about the God of War collector's edition, I will be referring to both editions. Also, I've never played a God of War game before, so I'm not going to go over the actual contents of the God of War collector's edition, since I don't really know anything about this series. Instead, I'll be focusing on the troubling pattern that's been emerging for collector's editions of games published by Sony, and it all has to do with the steelbook display cases. Well, not the actual steelbook itself, but rather the fine print at the bottom stating that no game disc is included. Instead, the collector's edition will include a digital download code for the game. That makes this the second time that a collector's edition for one of Sony's flagship IPs has replaced the physical disc with a digital download code. Earlier this year, Horizon Forbidden West released with the exact same issue. While there was a steelbook case included, all you'd find inside would be a digital download code for the full game. Not even a disc. What made the release of Horizon Forbidden West even worse was that you could buy the exact same steelbook included with the collector's edition separately, and it would include a physical copy of the game this way. It was only the collector's editions which lacked physical discs and instead included digital downloads. Now, as someone who personally prefers physical games over digital downloads, I feel like this decision by Sony to only include digital copies in their collector's editions feels very misguided. Now, I could be completely wrong here, but I have always assumed that the target audience for collector's editions are typically the same kind of people who prefer having their games on discs. So the decision for Sony to do this with their largest IPs baffled me at first. I mean, what is even the point of a collector's edition of a game if it doesn't include a physical copy of the game to collect? Sure, it comes with a steelbook case to put on display, but I feel like that will only serve as a reminder to physical collectors that the case itself is empty and they still lack a physical copy of the game in their collection. But like most things, this situation is more nuanced than it may appear at first, and once you get over the fact that there is no physical disc included with these collector's editions, their reasoning for doing so may start to become clearer. Now, I think one of the reasons why these collector's editions have only included digital downloads is because of the PlayStation 4. Despite the PS5 launching nearly 2 years ago, we are still in that awkward transition phase between console generations. Many people are still struggling to find a PS5 without having to buy one from scalpers, and with the immense amount of money required to make AAA games these days, it doesn't make any sense to make a game exclusive to only the latest generation when its install base is significantly smaller than last generation's. So rather than releasing both PS4 and PS5 versions of the collector's edition, the digital download code allows players to download the version for whichever system they have. But while this may seem like a temporary solution to a temporary problem, there is a second factor at play, which may cause Sony to permanently keep these digital downloads instead of physical discs being included in their collector's editions going forward. And that reason is the PlayStation 5 Digital Edition. This is the first time that Sony has ever made a digital-only system, and since it doesn't have a disk drive, the digital download code is their solution to being able to sell to both versions of PS5 owners. Luckily, there is a solution that can cater to both physical and digital players, and it's something that's become common practice in the movie industry. They simply need to include both a PS5 disc and the digital download code together in the game case. That way, there is no need to worry about which system someone has. Unfortunately, this option would likely result in lower overall sales for a game. You would essentially be receiving 2 copies of the game, and there's nothing stopping you from just selling the version you don't want. As a consumer, this seems like the best option. You get the version of the game that you want, and you can simply just sell the version you're not going to use, and that will help you cover the expense of buying a collector's edition. But since this will impact the overall sales of the game, it simply will never happen. And so, given the choice between a physical disc or digital download code, it's clear that including the digital download code in collector's editions allows them to appeal to the largest market possible. And on top of that, Sony probably doesn't want to be alienating people that chose the digital version over the disk drive version. Perhaps if there was a large enough pushback from fans wanting to see physical discs back in collector's editions, Sony may reconsider including them. But realizing that, at least here in Canada, the pre-orders for both versions of the God of War Collector's Editions sold out in the first day, I don't see that happening anytime soon. So unless Sony decides to completely abandon the entire concept of a digital-only system, I sadly don't see them ever reverting back to including discs in their collector's editions. Which means that anyone interested in filling that disc-shaped hole in their limited edition steelbook case will simply need to wait a few years until they can pick up a copy of the game used for $10. But these have just been my thoughts on the current state of Sony's collector's editions. But what do you think? Do you want physical discs to make a return, or are you happy with digital download codes? Let me know in the comments, and until next time, thanks for watching.